Hey, welcome back to the Hey Brother podcast. My name is Nick Clooney. I'm your host, and I'm so excited to share with you guys today Anton's story. He's a man that I encountered first when I did a year of service with Net Ministries. We talk about Net quite a bit. They do traveling ministry for youth. We both served a year on the road with Net, and it impacted both of our lives. But we start there, but then, it's been like 10 years since we did that, and Anton's been up to a lot. He's a film producer and he's working on a pro-life film, and we talk about that quite a bit in this episode, and I'm really excited to share that with you, what that means for him, how that's challenged him to grow as a man, and then also the ways that he's grown in brotherhood, particularly as a father, and getting to know his wife's friend's husband and how that relationship gets navigated is something that we kind of go into depth in this episode. So really excited to get you guys in there, and we'll go ahead and get the episode started. In today's world, Catholic men face countless challenges on the road to holiness. Addiction, anger, self-doubt, relationship struggles, and so much more. These battles can leave us stuck in mediocrity. But the truth is, we're made for more. The world needs good men. Welcome to the Hey Brother podcast, where we dive into these real struggles and share from our own experience as brothers and husbands and fathers. Together, we'll explore how to overcome life's challenges and become the men God created us to be. So grab a seat, brother, and remember, you're not alone. Anton, tell me about yourself. We met 10 years ago on Net, and I really know very little about your life since then.
Net happened. That was such a life-changing experience in like a very good way. You get what you take from it. You know how they talk about that, right? It's like, whatever. You can leave an experience like that and just, not have anything. You can leave everything on the mission here and you come back as the same person you were, or you can take it and just integrate it. That's really what I tried to do, was take it and then integrate it and make it kind of a part of my life, not by remaining the same as when I was on Net, but by changing. So I left Net, went to film school out in Southern California at JP Catholic.
Okay.
And then after 2.5 years there, I finished up school because I had some credits from earlier. I went to community college, finished up school there, moved back to Indiana.
Okay.
Got married.
Nice.
And then
What year was that? What year?
2019.
2019. Okay.
So
So
2019.
married for 6 years, or 5.5, whatever.
5.5
whatever.
at this point. Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
So 5.5 years of marriage. Then worked as an electrician for my dad's company for a couple years, and then moved. When we got pregnant with my first daughter, we moved up to around the Indianapolis area for my wife to be closer to her family, because I grew up in Southern Indiana. And then from there, let's see, we moved up here. I worked as an electrician for 2 years for a residential electrician. And then at the end of that, I'd been trying to get back into film stuff like that whole time I was working as an electrician. The reason I worked as an electrician is because I grew up as an electrician because my dad's an electrician. You do what your dad does. You kind of learn those skills as you go.
So you went to school in California, right?
Correct.
Is that what you said?
For film.
And then for film, what was the the school there? You said the JP2 school?
Yeah,
Or not JP?
it's John Paul the Great Catholic University.
Okay, gotcha. And so you went there to learn film, and then came
Yes.
back and started doing electrician work.
Right, because I started a family. I needed to be able to pay the bills.
Right.
And every time I tried to do something in film, it was God saying, wait.
Yeah.
And then finally he said, go. And I was like, okay, I have nothing. So I had no prospects, no jobs, no anything lined up. And I gave my boss a month notice. I was like,
Wow.
after this month, I'm going to be done. And then over that time, I got a big project and then a couple little projects that I then started after that. And for that first year, I got just enough.
Okay.
Like, it was absolutely nuts. I had just enough to pay rent, to feed my family for that entire time. Like, I wasn't dipping into
Yeah.
savings. The only time I had to use my savings is when both of my cars broke down within 2 weeks.
Wow.
Um, which was just um and then like it was almost like a constant test where God was like, all right, I'm gonna give you enough, and now I'm gonna take a little bit of that away. I'm gonna take a little bit of that
Wow.
away. And then in September of 2023, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was September of 2023. See, last year was 2024. Yeah, September 2023. Sorry, I had to go through it in my head. Um,
Sure.
I started a business with one of my friends out from JP Catholic, Michael. Um,
Okay.
and so he's a DP and a gaffer. So he does the camera work and the lighting work for filming.
What's what? I don't.
So a DP is technically a director of photography. So
Okay.
they're the ones who are basically, it's their job to make the vision of the director happen. So they're in charge of the camera, helping plan out the shots, helping to guide all of the other crew members to making sure the shot looks the way the director wants.
Okay.
And then a gaffer is the one who's in charge of all the lighting. So he's the one who either does it himself or directs everyone else to gauge all of the lights that are used for film. And you would be, if you've seen any behind the scenes stuff, you'd be amazed at how many lights are involved with just a normal shot of film. It's crazy.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But no, he's an artist when it comes to light. It's incredible how
Interesting. Yeah.
he changes like a couple small things, and you're like, I have no idea what you actually changed, but it looks better. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, I have a buddy, actually, the guy who I first interviewed for the podcast,
Hmm.
Bobby, who's
Yeah.
really into photography, and he's talking about that light difference. Like, it
Hmm.
changes the tone entirely of a picture you're capturing, and
Oh
I
yeah.
imagine all the same for film, right? Like,
Oh,
where it's like
100%.
all of a sudden we're in a different
Hmm.
different place with the
Oh
just
yeah.
because the lighting's different. Yeah.
It's the feeling that you get from light is just incredible. No, something that's different between film and photography though is the concept of light in motion.
Okay.
So when you have an actor moving through light, so instead of taking a photo and you get the light exactly where you want and have things exactly where they need to be, with film, you have to light both in a space and specific. Um, so for example, when you have an actor walking through a space, they have to be evenly lit through the whole space.
Okay.
Um, but you also want to be able to have those moments where they're in light and then in dark if they need to
Mm,
be. Or say skin tones. Like you and I are very kind of pale in our complexions. But like say you have
sure.
someone who has olive skin or black skin, right? They actually have to be lit completely different than somebody who has our skin
Interesting.
tone. Otherwise, you don't see them properly in the film. So if you have some people who have darker skin and olive skin and white skin all in the same scene, you actually have to address them slightly differently so they actually stand out from the background.
Interesting.
Yeah. There's a lot
Interesting.
of
Yeah.
there's so
So
much
that's
when it
the gaffer job is to like account for all of those details.
well, no, the gaffer's job is to execute what the director of photography tells him to execute. So the director
Oh,
of
okay.
photography is in charge of those details.
Okay,
Technically.
gotcha. Gotcha. But your friend Michael, is it Michael?
Yes, Michael. He does
Yeah,
both.
he's both. So okay.
Yes. He
He's
does
his own
both
boss
professionally.
on
Yes.
that
Well,
front.
and hopefully eventually we'll actually have people to work under him
Yeah.
to actually do all those things. Right now we're running with a really small crew, which is actually preferred for the project we're working.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so um did that, started our own business, and then God dropped a project into our laps. Um, and now we've been working on that for the past 10 months.
Okay.
And it has been a journey, man. It has
Yeah.
been a journey.
Yeah. What I mean, before you go into the project, I had a
Yeah.
question.
Oh, sure.
about jumping into like starting your own business. Was there so dad electrician? I'm imagining
Hmm.
pretty pragmatic. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Was there any backlash from him or from anyone in the family when
Well,
you're like, "Hey, I'm gonna go do this film thing full time without like a super big plan?" And
well, I kind of have a track record of just doing whatever I think I'm supposed to be doing. So like going on to
sure,
net was kind of out of nowhere from everybody. It was
yeah,
like, oh, he's doing this. Okay, I guess he's doing this thing now. I guess we're not going to see him for a year. Um,
right,
it wasn't one of those things that I didn't really talk to them. I don't think anyone was surprised, but I don't think anyone was like excited for me, if that
mm-hmm.
makes sense either. It was kind of just one of those, well,
Sure,
because like my dad started his own business. Um,
okay,
and the company that he owns is the electrical company that I worked for when I worked with him. Um, and then my older brother has started a couple businesses himself. So starting businesses is kind of something that's like seemingly part of what the family does. So, but doing it in film, I think it was just kind of weird for them.
sure,
So, because
yeah.
it's a very different thing than most of the stuff my family has done up till now.
Gotcha. But there's like a history of entrepreneurship, like people
Yes.
doing the
Yes, there
things
is.
that
Yes, there
they
is.
want to do. So nice.
Yeah. So
Okay, that's cool.
it's been interesting. It's been good. Now,
Yeah.
the journey of getting everything started with my wife was probably the most challenging
Okay.
because her perception
Yeah.
of what a man's supposed to do is like, it's supposed to be 9 to 5. You work at this things, you get your vacation, you get your paid time off, you get these things, and you always know what you're making, and you can save, and you can do these things. And I'm like, nope, we're gonna start our own thing and
Yeah.
make money in a different way and not get paid for X amount of months at a time because we don't have money
Right.
coming in because we're starting this business. And we're going to
Yeah.
be, we're going to owe people some money because they've helped us out and we need to pay them back eventually. And just,
Right.
it's just a challenge.
Yeah. All of those
So,
standard like 9 to 5 stuff like gets
hmm
thrown out the door. Right. Like
oh
it's
yeah,
like
all of that's gone.
we're doing something new.
Oh, right. And I think the stress of not knowing is what's been the hardest thing for her. But something that we
Yeah.
both can agree has been a huge blessing is the fact that I'm actually have a better relationship with my children now than I did when I
Yeah.
was working for somebody else. And the reason
Yeah.
is that like I can go home multiple times a day. So like I go home for an hour for lunch and I put my girls down for their naps.
Yeah.
And so like they see me in the morning time, at least for 30 minutes, where I get to talk to them, see how their day's going. And then they take a couple-hour nap. And then couple hours after I put them down, I come home from work like an hour after they wake up from their nap. So I'm home for all of those evenings. And so
Yeah.
it's created this really beautiful relationship where I can actually spend time with my children. I have 3 daughters, by the way.
3 daughters.
Three
Nice.
daughters, yeah.
Nice. What are they close? All close in age,
So there's
assumably.
4, 2, and just turned 1.
Just turned 1. Wow, that's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. What a
So,
blessing that is, though, to like be able to be present
mhm,
um, throughout the day. Like when you are in charge of your own schedule,
yeah.
I'm sure there's pressure that comes with that, but there's
Oh, there
also
is.
like the freedom of like I could be home and
Right.
really care for your kids, but also like
Mhm.
care for your wife in that way of like
Yeah, absolutely.
taking a round of naps, right? Like
Right.
I got
I got
this
this.
time.
Yes,
Like
exactly. And so,
yeah,
well, and the other side though is that with film specifically, it's project basis. So like we'll be on set for a week or 2 weeks. And eventually, once we
okay,
start doing features, we'll be on set for a month at a time. So it'll be like I'll
yeah,
be busy for a month, but then I'll be able to have more time with the family for the rest of the year. So
yeah,
it's a give and take. There is a give and take there.
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. How about tell me about the project that you guys are working on. Go
Yeah.
there next.
Yeah. So the project that we're working on is called Gone Unseen. Um,
Okay.
it's a feature length pro life documentary that takes an intimate look at the stories of women who have had abortions and their journey and struggle towards healing. So the project as a whole, it's really kind of looking at, all right, who were they before their abortion? What led them to actually making the choice of having an abortion? What were the effects of that choice? And then how did they start healing and what was their healing journey like? So most the women that we were talking to have come to a certain point in their healing, because the
Okay.
documentary is about the hope that can come after. Because I don't know if you know this, because people who aren't like directly involved with the pro-life movement usually don't, but like there's about 20 million women who are older than 45 who have had abortions.
Okay. Wow.
20
Wow.
million.
That's a large number.
Yeah, that's
That,
that's
yeah.
around an eighth of the population that's older than 45.
Wow.
1/8. That's just
Yeah.
it just
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Yeah. Man.
And
And
so oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Yeah. I was gonna say like that. Yeah, that's crazy. Like how. Yeah. 20 million
Around that.
women, 45 old or older.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, because it's just like fertility, usually decreases what around
Right. That's when menopause
30
usually
and
happens, is right around that
right,
area.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
and yeah, that is shocking. That's shocking.
Yeah. It's
What?
mind-boggling.
How did you guys get connected with the project?
So the project in and of itself kind of started from a conversation that my business partner's parents had with a couple gentlemen at a 40 Days for Life event.
Okay.
They were at a 40 Days for Life event in Ohio, and this was a couple months after Ohio had constitutionalized abortion. Um,
Hmm.
and so in that process, they were like, we need to do something to kind of reinvigorate the pro-life movement in our area. And they were like, we need to do some presentations before people, and they're kind of just brainstorming on ideas of like, how could we do this? And one of them was like,
Sure.
oh, we should bring a woman who's had an abortion to talk about her story. And they're like, well, logistically, that would be kind of impossible to get a woman at every parish, at every mass across,
Yeah.
the state. That would be kind of crazy. Um, and so they were like, well, what if we did a video? And my business
Yeah.
partner's parents were like, our son owns the production company that does this kind of stuff. And so they told us about the project. We had a meeting with them and we were thinking and praying about like, what should we be doing here? Like, is this
Hmm.
something we should be pursuing? Was the first question. And then this question after that kind of came to like, is this big enough? Is a
Yeah.
15-minute video for one diocese in Ohio, that seems too small for this story. This story is a story that
Yeah.
hasn't been told yet. Like there is no documentary out there. There's nothing that really touches on a broad scale this story of what actually happens to a woman after abortion,
Yeah.
and why healing would be important, or the fact that healing is even available.
Yeah.
And the crazy part about this whole thing is when we started diving into this, like I had no idea about most of this. Like I'd professed myself to be
Sure.
pro-life, right? Like did March for Life as a teenager. Um, when I was a kid, we used to pray outside of an abortion clinic with my mom. Like that
Yeah.
pro-life group actually shut down an abortion clinic, which was really cool. Like I was around when that happened. It was really
Yeah.
cool. But like I never asked myself the question, what happens to a woman after her abortion? I always just
Yeah.
thought what the culture taught us, which is, oh, it's fine, right? They just don't have a baby.
Yeah. It's
That's
interesting when you think about it from like the pro-life perspective because like
yeah.
we're always like before like how do we care for the woman before the abortion? Like how do we
Hmm.
stop the abortion from happening and like just like continue to think about it that way where
Right.
you're right. Like it never crosses my mind to think about like what about the women who have had abortions,
Yeah.
right? Like they they need help. Like
Yeah, and
yeah.
they're some of the people that need love the most.
Yeah.
And the crazy part was though, is like I said, I didn't think about it. And like at that point in my life, I had felt that God wasn't calling me to be fighting the pro-life fight.
Yeah.
I'd kind of taken a step back and be like, you know what? Roe versus Wade is over. It's fine. I don't need to do anything. This isn't my fight. God
Sure.
had a completely different plan.
Yeah. He often
Um,
does.
yes, he does. Um, but I'll also say this, I wasn't ready to do this documentary.
Yeah.
Um, my heart wasn't ready. And so what was interesting is we started finding women who had had abortions and doing pre-interviews with them. So I
Okay.
basically would have a Skype call or a phone call, or maybe even meet in person. And we'd sit down and I would be like, in broad strokes, tell me your story.
Yeah.
And dude, it's dark.
Yeah.
It's emotionally heavy. I went home every day in an emotional funk.
Yeah.
And after a couple days of that, my wife looked at me like, we're doing 9 months of this. Like,
Mm.
I can't have
Yeah.
this. Like this is not okay. Like you're not okay doing this.
Yeah.
Because I was living in darkness. I was living surrounded by these women's stories, and I felt like a priest sitting in a confessional, but I wasn't able to do anything to help them.
Yeah.
All I could do was listen. I couldn't even offer them forgiveness like a priest can.
Yeah. 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 And that's so hard. Like just to
Yeah.
be sitting there and
Just
listening to.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
absolutely
Well, so
crazy.
you said that you were set to do that for 9 months. Your wife, like being a good wife, notices like this is
Yes,
this is
this
gonna
is
be
not
bad.
okay.
Like, like not that it's bad to listen. It's great to listen, but
Right.
like what it's doing for you, like noticing that's an awesome like move on your wife's part. But then
Oh yeah.
for 9 months at a time, so like what were you listening to like multiple women's stories in a day? Like what was that like, or
Sometimes.
just kind
Sometimes
of
it was
like
once in a day. Sometimes it was twice in a day.
okay,
After doing one or two twice in a day, I made it a limit to only doing once a day because I couldn't handle it.
yeah, yeah,
Because literally after I did that, I could get nothing else done during the day. I couldn't do any
yeah,
work. I couldn't make phone calls. I was just shut.
yeah,
And what was interesting is that this was right before the Eucharistic Congress,
okay,
and we had gotten passes to go to the Eucharistic Congress. So um, my wife is part of Regnum Christi. I don't know if you know anything
yeah,
about them. They're
sure,
just a congregation, or not a congregation, a confederation of lay people
okay,
who live out a certain charism. So it's really cool. They have a great foundation. My family was that as well, so that's my foundation. I'm a little more charismatic, so I'm not a part of Regnum Christi myself,
gotcha,
but I definitely support them. So we were
sure,
at one of their events, and I went to confession with a priest friend of mine, and I was sharing some of these, my sharing some of this, talking about the frustrations that I was feeling towards certain things and all this stuff, and he looked at me dead in the eyes, and he was like, those frustrations are actually the thing that are the cracks that the devil's getting in, right?
hmm.
Like that is where the darkness is seeping in. And for me, my frustrations were with Catholic media, with
Okay,
Christian films, with our bishops, with the church at large, and the list
yeah,
goes on and on and on and on, right? Because like there's so
yeah,
much bad and there's so many frustrations. And I was like, oh, it's just this frustration, it's fine. But it
yeah,
wasn't. So
yeah.
it was like first
Was
90.
was
Go
it
ahead.
frustration like in inaction, like the people weren't doing anything, or was it frustration like at like offenses that these people have caused, or
All of the above.
what was all of the
So
above? Okay,
like Catholic media. Catholic media should be the best media. The problem
yeah,
is that Catholic and Christian media is good enough.
yeah,
So we're not making the Gladiators, the Inceptions, the even the Marvel movies, right? The original ones before Endgame.
sure,
Like
yeah,
we're not the ones making those. So they don't have a Catholic worldview.
yeah,
Like, but there's enough Catholics in Hollywood to actually make these movies. It's just
yeah,
we're not willing to pay for it. And people want to
mm,
make idealistic films instead of making films that are actually real to life.
yeah,
Or Christian
yeah,
films, which are literally, they're not allowed by, so I don't know if you know this, but Christian films have a strict list of requirements they have to be able to be labeled Christian.
interesting.
So if it's a Christian film, it has to have a come to the altar moment.
Okay,
It is required that they're only allowed having one challenging thing within the film. So major
interesting.
challenge. So if you look at any of the Christian films you've seen, you can actually put your finger on one major problem or one major challenge that they have, but that is the only major challenge they're allowed to have. So if
Yeah,
someone is dealing with lying and cheating, right? They can't also have an alcohol problem.
Only one major problem.
They can only have one major problem. And that problem has to be resolved by the end of the film.
Yeah.
And there's
yeah.
the list is
And
actually a couple pages long, by the way.
that's crazy. Or is like this list, is this like mandated by some like
Yeah.
organization, or is
Yep.
this?
There's a organization of, I think they're Protestant. There's a Protestant minister conglomeration or whatever they call themselves that
Okay.
basically owns the rights to the label, the Christian genre.
Christian.
So to be
Okay.
able to have it be a Christian genre, they have to certify that it's Christian.
Yeah.
And to do that, it has to check all of these boxes.
Man. Yeah, that feels off. That
So
feels
that
like it's
frustrates
missing.
me. But okay, there is
Yeah.
a reason for it, and it's because their market is Christian women who want something safe for their husbands and kids to watch.
That's fair.
That is their market, and that's who they're trying to reach. So
Yeah.
it makes sense. It's just not true to life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I'm sorry, but when you come to Jesus, the world doesn't change. Everything doesn't get fixed. Your perspective changes. You get fixed. And then the world is so much better because you're actually seeing it through a more realistic vision.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
more in touch with reality.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, actually, part of that, actually getting in touch with reality was at the Eucharistic Congress. Every night they had adoration.
Okay.
And the first night during adoration, I pulled out every one of those frustrations. And I literally felt like I was pulling out steel needles from my heart.
Yeah.
And so I pulled them out. I was super raw. I was crying. And then the night ended. And then the next night I was there again. And I literally was kneeling there, and Sister Miriam, who was leading the session, was talking about, letting all of those hurts out, letting your heart be healed. And I'm literally sitting there and I'm like, Lord, my heart is hamburger.
Yeah.
It's literally a giant mess that I can do nothing with. Look, just take it, please. So I literally take it. I can't handle it. And so I gave it to him, and I was like, wherever you're at in this building, I'm going to lay it at your feet, and you can bring it back to me when you come do the procession that they were doing that.
Sure.
So they started the procession. I'm kneeling there. I'm crying. I'm just, being in front of our Lord. And there was this moment where I got this flash of the Holy Spirit. And I say that because it didn't come from me, because I was like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then I was like, but wait, what if it's true? And the thought was this. It was, what if we traded? I'll give you my heart. You keep it. Don't give it back to me, but you give me yours.
Yeah.
Because I can't love these women with the heart that I have. I can't love them with the brokenness that is mine, that I have from my own traumas, my own childhood, my own experiences. But if I have your heart, then maybe I can love them the way they need. And it was literally at that moment, because if the stage is in front of me, if the stage is in front, I was in the first row on the right-hand side.
Okay.
And the Eucharist just turned to walk in front of the stage. So literally, Jesus was coming right towards me.
Yeah.
And it was just this moment of just relief, because the burden was no longer on me. And since then, I've actually been able to hear these women's stories and experience who they are, and actually be God's mercy to them.
Yeah.
Because I can sit there and I can listen and I can be compassionate. And in reality, I didn't know what compassion meant. Like, I had the head knowledge, right? But I had never experienced it or experienced what it meant to be compassionate until I had this experience, until I realized how much I needed to just hear them and love them, even though they've gone through something horrible, even though they've done something horrible.
Sure. Yeah. Man, that gives me goosebumps listening to that, because it's just like, it's good. It's like, it's what we're built for when we want to walk with people, is to like love with the heart of Christ. And
Amen.
And when you're doing it with women who've experienced so much trauma, so much
oh my gosh, dude,
woundedness, like, it's super powerful. But just to take it into kind of like the perspective of like guys who are listening to this, it's like, it's not
Hmm.
just the super beat up people in the world that need that kind of compassion. I mean, absolutely is, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
it's a beautiful thing, and like they need it the most. Like you even see that
yeah,
in the gospel. Like I've come to save the sinners, not the righteous, right? Like
right,
Jesus
exactly.
comes to get the people who are in the bottom, the low of the low, right?
Yeah,
Whether that's you know, trapped in sin, or like in the case of the women you're working with, trapped in
yeah,
woundedness, right? Like he's there for them. But
100%.
for guys who are listening to this, me and you as husbands, right? Like loving with the compassion of Christ to our wives, to our
Yeah.
kids, right? Like
Well, I actually have a perfect example of just that, which has been so interesting. So there's a guy that's very near and dear to my heart. His kids play with my kids all the time. My wife and his wife are basically best friends. They are best friends. What am I
nice.
saying? Um, but we've never had a really strong relationship between me and him. Um,
Okay.
and so it's been one of those things where it's like he's reacted poorly to some of the stuff that I've done, just been really hard back and forth. But this guy is a super upstanding, some Catholic dude. Like he's
Yeah.
phenomenal. Like anyone who looks at him as being would literally say like that dude is close to being a saint. Like
Yeah.
that's the type. He just has such a good heart. But here's the thing though, right? Is that sometimes the things that I did reminded him of his dad. And his
Oh.
dad had not been the best father to him growing up. His dad
Yeah.
actually had got deported. And
Oh
so
wow.
at one point for like a year or something, I don't remember how long it was, but he got deported at some point. So he had to be the head of his family
Wow.
and take care of his brothers and his mom. Like, so there's a lot of honestly trauma
Mm-hmm.
that was affecting him that by seeing me and the way I behaved reminded him of his dad. So he reacted in response to me in that way.
Yeah.
Right. And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, it hurt. And yes, I could judge him for that. But like,
Sure.
he needed my compassion. He didn't need me to be hurt and upset and mad at him. He
Yeah.
needed me to love him because that's the only way he's going to be able to get healed. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like that's the only
Absolutely.
way. And like, and I can look at my own life and I can probably tell you at least 5 different stories of things that I've done to people that have been out of my own brokenness and my own
Yeah.
pride and my own things that it's only been because my wife has loved me through it. Or I've had a brother
Sure.
call me out and be like, hey, dude, you're being an idiot.
Yeah.
Like I had that with
Yeah.
one of my big projects in school. Um, I was very much wanted to be a certain way, had these different things. And I
Sure.
got caught up in the culture of California, which was, it's all egocentric. It's all about me,
Yeah.
what I want, what is good for me, how this helps me, all that kind of thing. It's a real thing, man. It's crazy. Um,
Yeah.
but
I
I
can't imagine.
was, yeah, it was nuts. I knew there was something out there that I shouldn't be doing, right? But I
Yeah.
fell into it too. Like I was looking out for it. And
Yeah.
so I was treating the people around me very poorly, my friends, like very dear, good friends, poorly because it was all about me, what I wanted. And I
Mm-hmm.
literally had a brother, somebody who actually was on net with us, um,
Yeah.
sit me down and be like, hey, this is what you're doing. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, shoot. I am
Yeah.
so sorry. I am such an idiot. And I literally
Yeah.
I had to flip everything around and I had to go apologize to everybody for being a jerk
Yeah.
because
Wow.
I needed somebody to come out and tell me, hey, you're doing this thing wrong
Yeah.
and not judging me, but giving me that compassion and saying, I'm
Yeah.
telling you this because I love you and I don't want you to hurt other people and I don't want you to keep walking down this path because you're going to regret it
Yeah.
and loving me
Yeah.
through that.
Yeah.
And it was a game changer for me because it made me see what I had become.
Yeah. Praise God for for good brothers. That's
Oh,
like
amen.
amazing, amazing. Because it's just like if he hadn't said anything, like
Yeah.
there's gonna be no opportunity for change or growth in that moment. But like
Hmm.
him having the boldness, him having the courage to be like, hey, dude, like this is what's going on. Like,
Yeah.
and like for you to be able to receive it, I think is really good too, right? Like, I think it could have
Yeah.
been really easy, like on your end, to probably like, dude, like screw off, like I'm gonna live my life, right? Like that's like our pride that that gets in
Right.
the way a lot of times. But like, thankfully you were able to receive it, like on your part, having the humility to receive it, on his part, the boldness to say something. And the
Yeah.
whole thing is great because it speaks to what we do through Catholic Psych. We have the model of, I'm a Catholic Psych mentor. I don't know if I could have said that when we were in our pre-meeting
Uh,
to talk about what I do, but I'm like, but this is a interview of Anton, and we want to listen to him. But just real briefly,
yeah.
like the model of healing that we look at is like we're built for relationship, broken in relationship, and healed in relationship, right? So like
Mm,
there's always this aspect of like, how am I growing in relationship with myself? How am I growing in relationship with others? How am I growing in relationship with God?
yeah.
And that's what propels us to become the men that God calls us to be. And here you are living it out, like with your brother in California,
Yeah.
and then also with this guy that you're walking with, who's your wife's best friend's husband, if
Yes.
I followed the chain correctly.
He's also a
And
very
like,
good friend of mine too. Like he is a good
yeah,
friend, even though we're like, it's complicated.
yeah. Was it? I mean, like, yeah, because like it's like one thing like to love him in that, and to like use the skill of compassion that
Hmm.
you've developed through growing closer to the Lord, loving with His heart and not our
Hmm.
own. But was it hard? Like, was it like ever like this moment, like, dude, what's your problem? Like, because he's
Well,
reacting to you as if you're his father, right?
well,
And like that could be
the hard part
painful.
was when I didn't know.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
hard part is when I didn't know, and I was get these reactions, and it really was hurting. Um,
yeah,
and so I was talking to I'm an external processor, so I process by speaking. So I was talking to my
yeah,
wife, and I was like, I was like, it's just, I can't do anything with our relationship. Like I am trying, but I can't make any steps forward at this point because there's something holding him away from me that I can't do anything about. And I think, and
yeah.
that's one of the things that I've learned through this documentary about trauma, actually, is that if someone is being triggered by trauma by you, you can do nothing except for love.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't
Mm-hmm.
force your way through that because all you're going to do is push them away. It's like two magnets that are both pushing north. Like you're not going to get them to touch. Like you push one
True.
closer, it's just going to push the other one further away.
Yeah.
Um, but and I was like, I got a feeling that it might be because of because of his dad. Just
Mm-hmm.
because I've met his dad a couple times and I kind of knew who he was, and like he's their relationship is much better. Like he has grown through
That's
that
good.
relationship, and like there's been a lot of healing in that relationship. But that trauma is still there even with the
Oh
healing.
yeah.
Like it doesn't just go away.
Right.
And that's and so the it was healing really started to happen between us, right? Even though there wasn't
Mm-hmm.
that much hurt, it was still there. Healing really started when had a conversation, and
Yeah.
like I opened up to him first, um, about about something that I struggle with, which is I have certain people that I want to be proud of.
Sure.
Like I have a short list of people who I want to be proud of me, and if they're not, I like die a little bit inside. It's like my
Yeah.
dad, my older brother, a priest friend of mine,
Yeah.
and this guy was actually on that list.
Yeah.
And I opened up about that and being like, you're one of those people because like you seem very disappointed in a lot of the stuff I do. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't want that because I want to be closer to you because my wife is so close to your wife. And I know she
Yeah.
wants us to be closer. Like, and I want to be closer. Like that's like we
Mm-hmm.
all want this to happen, but it's just not. And so like I don't want
Yeah.
to hurt you because of that. I'm like, that's just one of those things. And then that vulnerability opened the door for him to be vulnerable with me and opening about his situation, how he actually sees things. And it just
Yeah.
that vulnerability, that openness, that being willing to share created this space, especially with that compassion, right? With that
Yeah.
understanding, with that place of I see and hear you and I
Mhm.
respect you and I love you for it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it's
Wait.
scary, but it's so
Oh yeah,
good.
dude. Absolutely. Vulnerability, no matter how much you choose to be vulnerable, it's always scary.
Hmm.
But to your experience here, like to that point, it's like it's contagious. Like when
Yeah.
you're vulnerable with somebody, like then it prompts the other person, opens that door, like you're saying, and
Oh yeah.
they start to share. And like with vulnerability, like it's scary because it's like you're opening the door to one of two things. Like he could have chose to not be vulnerable with you, right?
Right.
He could have actually deepened the wound, right? Be like,
Oh, it
hell,
could have.
the hell with you, man. And
Yeah.
like, woof, like that. Like, okay, now the wounds are really like they're open and like it sucks. But when you let yourself be open to that, you can also let
Right.
yourself be loved. And
Right.
and like having that moment where both of you guys could be vulnerable with each other,
Mm-hmm.
what a healing experience. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
just to have a more strong relationship as brothers,
Yeah.
especially since your wives are so close, but then
Right.
to like actually be bold and like, it's a
Mm-hmm.
good on you, like just to be able to like, all right, this is the stuff I got going on, I'm gonna share it.
Right. Yeah. But it
And
also starts with a foundation of trust.
yeah,
Like I
for
would have
sure.
never told him that if I hadn't already had a foundation of like, I trust you and I know you care about me and my children and my family.
Right.
Like that's
Right.
that's the thing, is like, I know you're not malicious, so I can open myself up to you.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not going around like just being vulnerable to any other
Right,
stranger on the
exactly.
street. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm not going out and being vulnerable to some other guy's wife or
Yeah.
some single lady. Like I am
Yeah.
vulnerable with my brothers and I'm vulnerable with my wife and
Yeah.
selectively vulnerable with the other women in my life,
Right. Right.
but only
Yeah.
selectively.
Right. Yeah. Because you're meant for your one beloved, right? Like,
Right. Exactly.
the totality of that. So,
Yes.
but
But
it's good. It's like good.
no, I was just gonna say, like, it's one of those things that I found in my relationship with my wife and with other women and things like that, is like, we have to be our wife is the person that we love and cherish the most. But that doesn't mean she can be everything to us.
Yeah.
We have to have
Yeah.
men to support us and to help us grow.
Yeah.
And we cannot isolate ourselves from other women, because other women also need our love and our strength and the relationship with us. So
Absolutely.
it's just degrees of vulnerability. But there are some
Yeah.
things that, like, it's more appropriate to talk about with your men's group than it is to talk about with your wife.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Like, there are certain things that is like, yeah, she should know about it, but you don't need to go into depth about it if it's going to hurt her,
Right.
or if it's going to do something to her, or if she's like my wife, where it's like, if I tell, like, she won't let me, this is a really dumb example, but like, if somebody got hurt or if I got hurt in a certain way, she would just say, I got hurt and that's it. He doesn't want to know about how I cut myself or how I had to
Sure.
get stitches or how there was blood everywhere or anything like that. She hates
Yeah.
that stuff
Yeah.
because she
She just
sees
needs
it
to
in her
know.
head.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, things that my wife is going to see in her head, like, I don't talk to her about what these women go through.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, because I can't, because it would
Yeah.
hurt her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's
it's
not
like
something she needs to be challenged in.
yeah. It's not, it's like actually authentically loving her by not
Right.
sharing the gory detail, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a way that you're protecting her heart, and like, it's like, what she needs to hear and what she doesn't need to hear in that moment. And that can get very misconstrued, like very quickly though, right? Like where like,
Can be.
wait, you don't tell your wife everything. It's like,
Right.
well, yeah, no, I don't. Like, I'm totally honest with her, and I tell her when we have these conversations that we
And
we're truthful
she
with each
knows
other.
exactly what I'm working on.
Right.
She knows how many interviews I've had. She knows what I'm doing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
very freely willing to share with her everything. But I just know that when I have started to share things, she's like, I don't need to hear that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like,
that's
okay,
good. That's
I don't
good.
share. And those are, it's healthy. Right?
Yeah.
Because like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things. Like, if you like, it's like this. If you are married to someone who used to be an alcoholic, talking about what type of liquor you got when you were out with your friends or what type of wine you were drinking,
Sure.
that is not a good idea.
Right. Yeah. Not
Like,
not in the slightest.
it's one of those things that it's a matter of care, right?
Yeah.
Like, you probably know that they went out and got a drink, but if they're not talking about it, you can kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely interesting. Like, I think like when people listen and hear, like, it's like, it's really easy to kind of think that when we're sharing life with our wives,
Mhm.
that we lose our individuality in that. Like, I think
Right.
that's like a common misconception. And even like this whole sharing, like 100% of the detail all the time gets caught up in that, where it's like, no, actually, there's still boundaries between me and my
Hmm.
wife. That actually is the thing that makes it possible for me to give myself because I
Right.
am an individual, right? Like, because I
Yes.
am my own person.
Hmm.
And in a way, when you're withholding the details of these interviews, right, you are loving her. You're giving
Yeah.
her yourself to her in a way that is being respectful to her boundaries as an
Right.
individual. And it's just like something that I like. I know it's really easy for guys and women like to begin to see like this, like, oh wait, you're not telling me everything, like,
Yeah.
and that's a place from our own woundedness where we
Right.
could
Where we
start
don't,
to
it's that lack of trust.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's cool.
There's also the element of like, with me and my wife, like we both have a prospective men's group and women's group where we
Yeah,
meet once a week as men and they meet once a week as women.
yeah,
And like, whether we like it or not, women will share with their husbands
sure.
anything that's important that they deem as important and that is not supposed to be a secret.
Yeah,
Like that is just what they do.
yeah,
And men will share. I feel like men share some of the stuff,
sure.
but not nearly as
A
much.
little, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, women are built more communally, so
Yes,
like
they
they
are.
just like they're ready to go. I mean, like some guys definitely have that trait too, where
That's
they
true.
I talk more than my wife, so I'm like I'm the more the blabberer than she is, but the in general, like speaking, like
Yeah.
women do want to share. Like there's this uh, desire for
Oh yeah.
connection that
100%.
comes across through talking, right? It's like the
Yeah.
mirror neuron system, and the men are women's brain. Like, so like there's literally a system in the brain that we both have, men and women both have, but
Yeah.
that is like looking for connection. That's how anxiety is relieved through women.
Oh,
Whereas
interesting.
like guys is a TPJ, the temporal power junction, and they get relief by fixing the problem, right? If I can
Yes.
fix the problem, then I'm fine. And and so you see that in like men and women relationship. We both have mirror neuron systems and the temporal power junction, but the males most of the time is that large dominance of the
Oh
TPJ
yeah.
and the women the MNS. So
Well,
when your wife's sharing, like she's like looking for, I just need to connect with somebody
right.
about like these
Exactly.
things that we've been talking about.
Yeah. And I
Or
can't tell
go
you
ahead.
how hard it's been with this documentary not to want to
Yeah.
fix it.
Yeah.
Like seriously, not to try and fix it. It is so hard,
Yeah.
especially when I'm
Yeah.
sitting there and it's like I mentioned earlier, like, or maybe I didn't mention it earlier. Um, some of these women are on different planes of healing. Some
Hmm.
of them are like, they're over the hardest part and they're kind of on the other side, kind of looking to see what's next, right? Some of the
Sure.
women, they're still on that hard upward trajectory where like they're still struggling and still falling. And like, those are the interviews that were the hardest to hear. And like, we can try and help them somewhat, but we can't do much
Yeah.
because all we can do is really offer them love and suggestions. And like
Hmm.
the one lady I'm thinking about, she didn't want to leave set
Yeah.
because she felt welcomed and felt heard and felt loved around our group
Yeah.
in a way that she didn't wear in her life normally.
Man.
And and that's hard. It's
Yeah.
hard to see that. It's hard to experience that and to see how much you can't do
Hmm.
because it's like, I'll just give you a couple examples. One of the women that we interviewed, she was raped twice before her abortion, once as a 13-year-old and once as a 19-year-old, and then was sexually molested later in life.
Man.
Like, yeah. Um, like all very traumatic experiences. And that's on top of her abortion.
Yeah.
And if anyone out there was like me and doesn't know how traumatic abortion is, abortion screws women over.
Yeah.
like from every place. The most sacred part of their body has been violated. They are, well, I'll just use the stats to make it easy to understand because I can't tell you all the stories. I don't have enough time. You have to wait
Sure.
for the documentary for those anyways. But
There we go.
um, the likelihood of alcohol abuse goes up by like 280 something percent in a
Yeah.
woman who aborts her first baby. The likelihood of drug abuse is like 320 something percent. The likelihood of depression goes up by like four, or no, the likelihood of being mentally institutionalized in a mental hospital goes up by
Mm-hmm.
30%. The chances
Man.
of carrying a baby to full term versus carrying or aborting their first child, it is 30% more likely for a woman to be incarcerated in a mental hospital if they have an abortion.
Wow.
Heart failure in women goes up 500% if they aborted their first child.
Man. That's nuts.
Yeah, we're talking PTSD. We're talking trauma
Yeah.
on a
Yeah.
large scale degree. And think about the numbers that I shared earlier, right? This amount of trauma, 20 million women.
Yeah.
Why do you think what do you think a possible leading reason for our culture being as screwed up as it is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not just the woman that gets hurt. It's her family. It's the person who drove her to the place. It's her siblings. It's her parents. It's the boyfriend. It's her other children, if she has any.
Yeah.
All of these people are affected by this. And then think about how many connections one woman has.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how
Man.
many people is she affecting with this chain that is locking her down in depression, anxiety, hopelessness, or rage and anger,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because some people respond by diving into themselves, other people go out by exploding.
Yeah.
The women shout your abortions. Like it's all that rage.
Yeah.
And the thing is that we can't fix it.
Yeah. Yeah. And as men, it's like
We
what we want to
I know,
do.
right? That's exactly what we want to do.
Yeah.
We can't fix it. The only thing as men that we can do is say there is hope.
Yeah.
Healing is available. And if any of your audience knows anyone who has had an abortion, or maybe even suspects they have an abortion, right? There are places for healing, right?
Yeah.
And the places for healing, the best one, the ones that I know about that are all over the country, first off, Rachel's Vineyard retreats.
Okay.
Um, Rachel's Vineyard retreats are retreats where they dive into the grief, the mourning, the hurt, the trauma of the abortion, and allow God to step
Okay.
in embracing who they are. So it's a retreat. It's like a 3-day retreat. I'm actually going on one myself
Yeah.
to experience it, so I know what these women have gone through. But I have a very, very deep feeling that I need this retreat for my own healing, for some
Sure.
of the stuff that I've been through. The second one is Project Rachel. It's a diocesan
Okay.
led
Sure.
one, but they're all over the country in almost every diocese. Um, and they do support groups of women who have had abortions. Like
Yeah.
those are the big ones that are like nationwide. But like they will help women heal and
Yeah.
actually come back and break those chains because it's I can't tell you the hurt that was in the women's eyes when they told me about their abortion and what it did to them.
Yeah.
But I also can't describe the joy and the hope that was in their eyes when they talked about actually coming to healing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that experience was powerful.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's
Like
so good.
it's it's crazy, man. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, well, dude, Anton, I thank you for the work that you're doing with this film and just the pro-life movement, and just being willing to talk about that here on the podcast,
Of
and
course.
also being willing to talk about brotherhood and your experience in that, and just choosing to share vulnerably with where you're at in all of this. I think it'd be fun to have you on maybe another time in the future to hear more about film updates and to hear more about brotherhood. If you
Absolutely.
could, because I know I want to try to wrap things up in a couple
Sure.
minutes. But like what's one thing, like 30-second, one thing you want to work on as a man, and then where can people find information about you and your project and stuff like that that
Oh yeah.
you want out there?
Sure. Ooh, one thing I'm working on as a man. The ooh, it's like there's something I'm working on spiritually, but I don't know if it's for everybody. So I'm gonna share two.
Sure.
The
Here
first
we go.
one, take it with a grain of salt because it's not for everybody, depending on where you're at spiritually. Um, I am working on sitting with God,
Mm,
not doing anything. So not
sure.
praying in my head, not saying words to him out loud, not reading a book, not reading scripture. Like, yes, I'm doing the Bible in a year this year again. Do it if you
Yes.
haven't. It's amazing. Um, but just existing in myself and
Mm-hmm.
noticing God in me
Yeah.
and just sitting and being okay with that.
Yeah.
It's like I said, this isn't a place for everybody. You might not be at this place spiritually, so don't necessarily sit telling everybody you need to go do this. It's just
Sure.
it's just where I'm at. And it's been a very
Yeah.
interesting, different experience of prayer.
Yeah.
Um,
That's awesome.
so it's been beautiful though. It's been great. It's just been
Yeah.
different. Um,
Different. I'm sure.
the other thing I would say that I've been growing as a man is I've been working on this for a while, but I'm still struggling with it, is genuinely listening.
Sure.
So really listening with that eye towards mercy and compassion. And instead of just hearing the words and waiting to respond, genuinely listening and trying to fully engage with them as a participant and
Yeah.
then responding.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah, man, absolutely.
Okay.
It's like it's. I think it's going to be a perennial problem for men, or a problem that's always around. Where, like, how are we paying attention to the person that we're in front of? Because it's
Hmm.
like it's that temporal parietal junction. It's that planning brain that like wants to start like, okay, what's the rest of my day look like? What's the problem? Let's fix it.
Yeah.
What's
Right.
blah 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 blah. And so yeah, I think that's a beautiful thing
Yeah.
to want to
Or for
work on.
us
Is
with
like,
ADHD, not finishing their sentence in our head
sure,
and getting the answer before they actually finish telling us the sentence,
right,
because
yeah,
that's a
yeah,
thing.
absolutely, absolutely. That's
Um,
awesome.
yeah. But then the project is, you're interested in looking at the project or donating to the project because we honestly are in need of funding to do this because we tried kind of pushing forward on our own, but we're really at a point where if we don't pay our people, we're not going to be able to keep going. Um,
Sure.
so if anyone wants to donate, we would honestly really appreciate the support. But you can do all that and look at some of our stuff at goneunseen.org. We're currently redoing the website and putting an official teaser up there and a couple other things. So it might be a little bit after this is
Sweet.
recorded before we get it up, but we should have more information and everything up there. Right now, it's just a landing page. So you can still see what we have,
Sweet.
but it might just be a landing page,
Awesome.
whatever.
Goneunseen.com.
Org.
Org. Dot
Yes.
org. Okay. I'll put that
Goneunseen.org.
in the show notes,
Okay.
and anyone who's interested they can link to that goneunseen.org,
Yep.
and they can help support the mission that you guys are doing. And
Yep.
I think that's beautiful. That's
Yeah. And
awesome.
our
So,
company's name is Silver Lantern Studios.
dude, Anton, thank you so much for being here as a guest, and I want to thank everyone else for listening, and just encourage folks, to join the conversation on this video. If you guys like this content, like, subscribe, share, but comment, reach out to me, Nick at craftformore.com. I would love to hear from guys. Thank you, Anton, for being here, and
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you,
God
Nick, for
bless.
having me. This has been really great being able to share and talk about things. Like,
Yeah,
it's great.
yeah,
Thank you for what
that's
you're doing.
awesome. Hey, thank you. All right, we'll leave it there, and God God bless.